Welcome to the Daily Review. This is Razak, Senior Trading Strategist here at CM Trading. And today is August 7, 2024, and today is Wednesday morning. So looking at the highlights of the day, the markets bounce, and the question is whether or not this bounce is going to be a discontinuation of a sell-off, or we're going to test our lows or possibly even go lower. However, looking at today, there's no major economic event. So starting out with the Forex symbols, we saw the major pairs bouncing off of support or resistance depending how they're trading versus the dollar. Now looking at the indices, both the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ both get a bounce. And looking at commodities, all of them get a bounce. That's gold, natural gas, and oil get a bounce. And as we look at the stocks, they all get a bounce as well. Some more than others. However, Intel's still selling off. And lastly, looking at cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin gets a bounce as well. So this is the question, whether or not this bounce is going to be a dead cat bounce, which means that we're going to continue selling off, or we're going to somehow make it back and make some of that real estate back. So let's take a look at the markets and see what we can expect from today's trading. So here we go. First, we're starting with the Euro USD. It's retracing at that resistance level, which it's getting a bounce, right? So it's not a massive bounce, but still getting a bounce. And this did almost hit just 10 before it corrected itself down to 0917, which is about 80 pips. Not bad of a move for 2 days, and it gave you that fade opportunity. GBP USD also bouncing here at the bottom of the range of 127. If we jump into the Japanese yen, also bouncing off of this supportish level. I mean, it's created the supportish level at 144. No reason particularly to be at this level, but I'd still keep an eye on the Japanese yen leading indicating here, both because it first trades at the beginning of the day and because it's the Japanese yen, okay, which is just by nature its own leading indicator. Now looking at commodities, first starting to look at gold, get a bounce at 23.93. Okay, it's pretty much consolidating at this upper area. But it's very important because if gold sold off in an environment where the markets sell off, it doesn't necessarily mean that the markets are weaker. It just means that there's some people taking money off of the table. Remember, we're entering one of the most important, I think, in our lifetimes, one of the most important presidential elections in history. Okay, the difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is just so vast. I don't want to get into the politics of who's right, who's wrong. That's to be discussed probably at another time, and you could write volumes of books on it. But still, it's an important election, and this is going to be affected by it. So, with that said, I think people are taking some money off the table just to see how things are going to actually pay themselves out. Crude oil also got a bounce after hitting that supportish level at 72.75, and that's a decent retracement for oil. Now, jumping into the U.S. markets, the Dow Jones got a bounce, not a big bounce, but got a bounce at 39,300 as that retraced over 2,000 points. Now, looking at the NASDAQ, also got a bounce. Now, we got to keep an eye on this because they're not going to just give it to you. One of them is going to go first, back on the downside. It's going to test itself, or we're going to see it gradually kind of make back some of 50% that we sold off from. And that's really the test of time, all right? This will be the test whether or not this was a sell-off in order just to book some profits or a bona fide sell-off. Now, if you look at the individual stocks, Apple above $200, still retracing for its $236 range. If you look at Microsoft, did get a bounce, but not a significant bounce, okay? Didn't close that gap, just closed it, and then, so this is important, okay, because Microsoft is a huge bellwether, huge company that really makes a lot of difference. JP Morgan got a bigger bounce, okay, which is really good because it's above that $200 range. Remember, it went up to 217, so it still has some way to make back, but it's showing some strength there. And as we look at some of the other stocks, they're still bouncing. Like looking at Tesla, they're still bouncing, a decent bounce for Tesla as well. Now, looking at Intel, it's dead, okay? It means that it's still quite weak. And on its lows, it did not get a bounce, which may mean it could still go lower. And that'll really be the one to bring us lower, okay? So keep an eye on Intel also. Now, lastly, looking at Bitcoin, we got a bounce as well. So markets do this because after a sell-off, there's short covering, there's bottom fishing, and that's just the nature of this market. But you got to make sure that's solidified to make sure that this bounce is not just a bounce, but maybe a turnaround, or we're going to go back down to our lows. That's the question of the day. So that's what to look for. This is Razak. I want to wish you guys a great trading day. Thank you.